All rise. This court is now in session. Today, the criminal case of Grendel versus Hrothgar will be heard to determine the defendant's innocence or guilt and accompanying sentence in the case of the latter. The prosecution may state their case. I am here today in representation of Hrothgar, king of the Danes. For 12 years, a monster has terrorized the halls of Herod, claiming countless victims as a result of his insatiable bloodlust. This monster would, no doubt, still be claiming the lives of King Hrothgar's men had he not been stopped by the brave Bailiff. Across the room from us at this very moment resides the villain himself. And today he shall be brought to justice for his crimes against humanity. The prosecution believes that the death penalty is a fit punishment for the defendant, for if he is allowed to live, he will surely kill again. The defense may state their case. The purpose of this trial is not to debate the occurrence of the crime. Rather, it is to provide both justification and valid excuse for the aforementioned misfortunes in order to receive exculpation for the defendant. As a result of my investigations, it has become evident that there is more to Grendel's story than just what is recorded in the Beowulf manuscript. The defendant and other parties, which shall not be named, have brought forth numerous accounts of raids, led by King Hrothgar's men, on the swamp in which Grendel resides. The men terrorized poor Grendel countless times, disturbing his peace and destroying his property. These events took place prior to the attacks on Herod, and, consequently, it can be presumed that the defendant likely would not have begun such attacks had he not been previously provoked. In addition to the motives presented previously, it is to be noted that the Beowulf manuscript describes that the descendant's lineage can be traced back to Cain, whose sanguinary history can be accounted for in the book of Genesis. Cain, who murdered his brother, Abel, was cursed by the Lord for his wicked actions. This curse inhabits all descendants of Cain in the form of genetic material. The urge to kill resides in the defendant's genes, and is responsible for the events that led to this trial. The defendant had no choice, having possession of these genes, and thus cannot be held fully accountable for the crimes he is accused of. He has since shown great discipline and courage to resist his ingrained drive to kill. That was, until the unrelenting torment of Hrothgar's men impelled him to take matters into his own hands. The murderer's gene alone is enough to pardon Grendel of his crimes, and with the additional aforementioned role of Hrothgar's men, Grendel should be eligible for a full pardon from his crimes. Yes, as the defendant's attorney stated, the men of King Hrothgar did indeed conduct raids on Grendel Swamp. His presence was deemed as a threat to Herod, and Hrothgar decided to ensure the safety of his people by whatever means necessary. Regardless of the actions of Hrothgar's men, genealogy is obviously no excuse for the act of murder. If you were to develop a hereditary disease, would you be blamed? Not your genes. If you grew up to be vertically challenged, like your parents and grandparents, would it be your fault? The answer is no. A being cannot be blamed for its genetic makeup, and is predetermined, and said being has no power over it. This is most certainly true in Grendel's case, as he carries the murderer's gene passed down from Cain. He cannot be blamed for his actions. And on top of that, you admit that Hrothgar's men terrorized the defendant. Was there just cause for such actions? I think not. Grendel had made no attempts to attack Herod, or the Danes in general, and consequently was not actually a threat. The raids were uncalled for, which only adds to the excusability of Grendel's crimes. It is clear now, after hearing both the prosecution and defense's statements, that while the defendant, Grendel, has committed countless cases of homicide, his actions are of no fault of his own, and were spurred on by the unfortunate actions of King Hrothgar's men. In the end, however, a killing is still a crime, and the defendant may be required to receive some degree of punishment. Is there an alternative sentence that the defense would like to request in the event that complete exoneration is deemed by the jury to be undesirable? I believe that an acceptable alternative would be to place the defendant under house arrest and to isolate the surrounding area of his home, creating a situation in which no harm could be caused to either party. I understand. The jury will now make their decision. The jury has unanimously decided to alter the nature of the charges from murder to involuntary manslaughter, the punishment for which will be indefinite house arrest, as opposed to death.